Hi, I'm Nick Sohn, Chief Customer Officer at Brennan. Welcome back to Brennan Executive Insights. Today, I'm joined by John O'Connor, our Director of Managed Operations and Technology. Hey John, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Nick.
So we hear a lot about security, and that's a really big topic in our industry, of course. But there's a sideline to that which I wanted to talk to you about, which is resilience. Slightly different from cybersecurity, although related. I wanted to get your thoughts on the state of play around resilience.
Resilience needs to be at the core of everything that companies do currently. You've got an evolving environment where companies are becoming more and more reliant on technology, and you've got an increasing number of cyber attacks and risks and vulnerabilities that are occurring. So resilience needs to be built into the company's DNA of how they operate.
So resilience is obviously top of mind. We saw the global outage caused by CrowdStrike, and that has had a massive impact across the globe. What are your thoughts on that outage?
So everything can be affected by technology. We have a lot of companies that don't invest enough in ensuring that they can be resilient for such events. Having good backups, disaster recoveries, that was last decade. Now we need to move to continuous crisis management testing. So companies need to test for the event, such as the CrowdStrike event, where everything goes wrong, and people need to revert back to manual processes.
So that's a good point, right? Let's talk about that. I want to go a little bit deeper on this topic. So thinking about the preparation for this type of event again. You talk about the complexity that there is now in everyone's landscape and the IT environment and the effects that can have. How can we prepare ourselves for not if, but when this happens again?
I think if we take a page from big industry book. So if you look at the mining companies, if you look at the big electricity providers, they rigorously test for crisis management because they deal with it every day. So they deal with hurricanes and storms, and that is baked into their DNA. And what we see is those companies do very well at preparing for technology events such as this, such as the CrowdStrike event. The companies that don't have that as part of their DNA don't. So as I said, there's a lot to learn from those big organizations. And what they do is they regularly test for crisis management. So they have teams on standby, red teams, blue teams. They have playbooks that they have defined, printed off in directors' homes. They're ready to go at a minute's notice. And that's the mentality that we need to adopt going forward.
You talk about the big companies running crisis management, having the playbooks. Is it available to smaller companies? Can we afford to have that everywhere?
Yes, Nick. A simple Google search will find you a playbook from NIST. It's not that complex of a thing. You just need to want to do it.
Yep.
And most companies don't want to do it until they've had a crisis, which is like insurance. You generally don't need it until you need it. And it's the same with crisis management. You need to test, advance. It's not that difficult to implement or to bake into the DNA, but it just needs to be a want of the company to do it.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing is getting the playbooks, setting aside time to actually work them through before a crisis occurs, probably not that hard, but you really need a strong desire to want to do it.
Correct, yeah.
So we are seeing that technology is ever more interconnected, and we do see that there are events that occur outside of your own IT landscape that can have an impact within your IT environment. Again, how do we think customers should prepare for that?
It comes back to testing and being prepared. So we've seen with the CrowdStrike event and numerous other cyber attacks over the last couple of years that every part of the supply chain, every industry is deeply reliant on technology. And if those companies are not testing for the worst and hoping for the best, they're missing a trick. We saw the big cyber event, Optus cyber event, and the flow-on effects from that. We saw customer outages, as simple as a POS device going offline. Why not carry 2 SIM cards with 2 different providers? It can be simple, but people need to think that way. We've built such a reliance on technology, and it's become nearly a commodity in terms of price. People's expectations need to shift accordingly.
Do you think there might be a prevailing view out there that we need to spend a lot of time and money and effort securing our data, securing our environment? And so a lot of effort in security and maybe not quite enough focus on resilience and getting things back up and running in the event that something does happen, because some of these events that we're talking about aren't a cyber breach within your own environment. They're not specifically a cyber attack of any type, but they are having a massive impact on the customer. So I guess the question is security versus resilience, ability to get up and running again.
I think it's both, Nick. I think what we've seen with major cyber events has two impacts. Firstly, it takes operations offline. So people need to test for that event because it will occur. Unfortunately, it'll occur within most industries within Australia, or if not already. And then they need to try and protect it. But I think they need to test for the eventuality that it will actually occur. And that's the same for me as any other, so whether it's a flood or whether it's fires, it's the same thing. You're testing for that recovery capability and being prepared, which is the same for cyber as it is, as I say, for other events.
So, of course, we hear a lot about AI and automation. What's the role of automation and artificial intelligence in helping us to recover from some sort of outage or event?
There's probably a few different parts or points where AI and automation can help, not just in detecting events as they occur, and event correlation is kind of some of the buzzwords, and how companies can pick up an event occurring in real time, and then also using technology like infrastructure as code to build out secondary infrastructure on the fly, on demand. You got public cloud where we can scale elastically and on demand. There's so many different technologies available that help you to be much more resilient, but you need to invest in them up front, not reactive.
So, okay, if I think about the strategy that CIOs should be implementing, how do we think about that?
So a strategy needs to encompass business systems, it needs to encompass infrastructure, compute, security, data centers, networks. It has to be all encompassing, but it has to tie back to how a company operates and how they want to operate and their risk tolerance.
Okay, so what I've been asking all my guests is, and for you, thinking about resilience, okay, tell me something strategic, something tactical, and something practical.
Strategic would be to align to an industry framework. So there are many out there, ISO, NIST, SOC 2, Type 2. All of these have inbuilt resilience into the frameworks. So aligning to those is the most strategic thing that companies can do.
And something tactical.
Have lots of backups, store them in lots of locations. We can use Azure, blob storage, you can use tape, do it all. Because when an event occurs, you're going to rely on all of them.
Just on that topic of the backups, I presume you're also rigorously testing that these backups are working.
Of course, and that comes back to what I talked about earlier about crisis management testing. You need to ensure that those backups can be relied upon, they can be called upon, and they're available.
Okay, now something practical.
Practical. The most practical thing in any event that occurs is having level-headed people around you and good business partners.
Great, John. Great talking with you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you for joining us at Brennan Executive Insights. See you next time.